and it will be met forcefully. And when, I will not say, because I don't like talking about timing.
All right, the president earlier tonight during a meeting with military leaders at the White House discussing how to respond to the latest chemical attacks in Syria that has now left at least 40 dead. Here with reaction, Sonoran Policy Group Vice President, retired CIA Senior Intelligence Officer Daniel Hoffman, former Deputy Assistant to the President, Fox News National Security Strategist Dr. Gorka. Mr. Hoffman, let me start with you. You understand this region. From what I understand, you've worked there quite a long period of time.
I did. I was chief of the CIA's Middle East operations for a few years, from 2010 to 14. And we delivered pretty stark assessment to the Obama administration about how Syria would be transformed really into a petri dish of threats to our national security. And we're seeing that play out, where Russia and Iran and Syria really have this sort of axis of evil together, targeting innocent civilians and the opposition. Russia claims to be there to fight ISIS, but that's really not their purpose at all.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Do you believe that this was the Assad regime, and weren't they supposed to get rid of those weapons?
They were. It was absolutely the Assad regime. They've allegedly launched at least 8 chemical weapons attacks this year using sarin and chlorine. They were supposed to have eliminated their stockpiles back in June of 2014 by the agreement that you highlighted earlier. And of course, as we know, that the Assad regime isn't going to be held to those sorts of agreements, and they kept certainly enough chemical weapons to launch these sorts of attacks. And we really need to make them pay for it, but we also need to make Russia and Iran pay for it, because those are the two countries that are enabling Syria ultimately in their tactical and strategic objectives.
Dr. Gorka, let's get your take on this. I thought I heard the president say we probably know after the fact, almost sounding like it's a certainty. I would not blame him. He did act before when the similar circumstances arose in 2017.
Look, if we don't send a very clear message that this cannot be done again, others will use chemical weapons. We have international taboos, international treaties. Russia broke one during the Obama administration by invading another country and taking its territory for itself. That administration did practically nothing. Now we have chemical weapons used against women and children. The president, I guarantee you, in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, will send a very strong message, as Mr. Hoffman said, not just to Assad, but to his sponsors and his backers, to Russia, to Iran, even to China and North Korea, that would ever think about using these weapons against innocent civilians. This isn't about 2003. This isn't about invasion. This is about chemical weapons use.
But the nexus between politics and national security is intersecting tonight. And I even know that there are people on NBC News that have suggested, even though the president announced long before any news about Michael Cohen that he would make a decision within 24 to 48 hours, they've actually used the term on Conspiracy TV, NBC, wag the dog.
It's reprehensible. These are the same people who say that this administration is colluding with Russia and that the president works for Vladimir Putin, when for the last 15 months, every single significant policy decision coming out of the Oval Office with regards to Russia has been bad for that KGB office of Vladimir Putin, whether it's the XL pipeline, arming Ukrainians, increasing our defense budget, all of it. They live in a fantasy. And you know what? At the end of the day, their political correctness undermines our national security, because we have to look at these issues clinically, unemotionally, and through a lens that looks at it as if it is reality, not some kind of, echo chamber like Ben Rhodes was proud of. Remember the echo chamber?
Yeah. Mr. Hoffman, I agree with the president, and in as much as we can't be the world's policeman. There are circumstances. I don't think America can fight wars anymore after the experience in Iraq, where it becomes politicized after thousands of Americans give their lives and limbs. Oh, Washington decides, never mind, we don't fight wars to win them. We put ridiculous rules of engagement on our brave men and women. We're deciding in Washington, not on the ground, what to do. Same thing happened in Vietnam. We lost 58,000 people. But there are certain moments where it's only the United States. Are we going to sit back? Do we have a moral obligation when we see images of women and children being gassed to stop it and prevent it?
We do. We've got a moral obligation, absolutely. That's a violation of international norms, and we do need to take action. We also have a strategic requirement, too, to support our allies in the region, Israel, Jordan, and Lebanon, not to mention Europe, which has been impacted so severely by the migration crisis. All the inaction from the previous years really resulted in a massive level of threats to our national security. And I think what the administration is probably thinking about on John Bolton's first day is, what are our options? One of them certainly is to launch an attack on a Syrian airbase, and I think we'll do that. But secondly, do we set up safe zones for the population? And third, would we go even farther and resume assisting, arming anti-Assad opposition so we have a little more skin in the game?
What about Russia saying, you know Russia well? What about them saying, oh, they didn't do it?
Yeah, I watch the Russian news, Sean, and I watch it every day, and that's what they called it, falshivka, false news. That's what they do. They denied that they used the nerve agent against Sergei Skripal, the defector. Their population might believe that stuff, but we've got to hold them accountable as well. You know
Russia well. Let me ask you one question while I have you on the show. With Hillary's email hacked by so many foreign agencies, we would never know where the emails came from, would we? Real quick. The Russians were all over those emails. I'm sure that they probably were the Chinese and the Iranians and the North Koreans, because Hillary's. We'll pick it up another day. I promise. I'm just out of time. All right, I'll respond to Jimmy Kimmel straight ahead.